You're listening to NFT 365, the first daily podcast on NFTs with your host, Fanzo.
What's up, friends? Welcome back to another episode of NFT 365. And part of the beauty of having a daily podcast where we're recording video, we're turning it into blog posts, is it gives me an opportunity to not only not have to niche down with only creating content for collectors, only creating it for creators, only creating it for brands, but it also gives me the opportunity to be really tapped in across the board, right? And there's lots of news that happens in this NFT space. And, just this last couple of days, one of the things that happened was that two people that were responsible for a massive rug pull, a malicious rug pull, where they set up the project with 100% the goal of stealing people's monies right after the project sold out. They actually created a second project, and the crazy thing is they were arrested and are being charged. And it's the first time that's happening here in the United States, and it's great news. It's great news for the idea that we have to look at NFTs and our digital footprint as things that are also still held accountable when it comes to people having malicious intent and people creating something with the simple, goal of taking advantage of other people's and stealing their money. And so, that's some great news, right? There's some news that happened. Madonna bought a Bored Ape, which, I think when it comes to celebrities, for me, when there's like celebrities that are all kind of playing in the same arena, I'm not really I don't get too excited when I see, that, hey, there's a bunch of rappers, or, hey, there's a bunch of late night, comedians. But when you have people that are connected to new, audiences, or will, get people's light bulbs to turn on, of course, that's an exciting thing. And that's how I kind of looked at, Madonna, the Madonna news. We, of course, had ApeCoin that dropped earlier this week, which was long anticipated. And I did an episode kind of on that and kind of some of the things I thought with when it comes to, ApeCoin and what I think Bored Ape Yacht Club is doing. And then there's also, been a lot of conversations around some massive phishing schemes, some hacks. I spent over 2.5 hours yesterday on the phone with some others that had also been hacked. I had spent some time with MetaMask team talking to them about things that we could do to improve, just really help protect ourselves from ourselves in many cases. But I say all of that because there's lots of moving parts, lots of things that are going on. And there's something that I've kind of shied away from in the conversation, not because I didn't want to address it, but because I wanted to kind of wrap my head around how I present this. And part of this is, the idea of like the inner circle, or we could call it the alpha groups, or we could call it where, exclusivity is kind of like that magic element. And what's so interesting about this space, NFTs and crypto is very similar, is that if a collective group of people come together and want to manipulate or to really cause massive impact on one project, on one deployment, one launch, they can actually do that, right? And especially if those people have great influence, right? It's actually one of the things, it's so interesting that we think about decentralization, where we're saying no one person has all the power. But what that oftentimes means is that a group of people can come together and they can really become the power in any way they want to do. And I will say, for me jumping in this space originally, I had some people reach out to me that are fairly big names in this NFT world. And they wanted to invite me in to like kind of their cool kids club is where it felt like, right? And I've never been one that like kind of fits well in that, like, hey, come here where all the cool kids are. You'll be able to play like how we play. And it's not saying that I don't entertain, like I am a part of some alpha groups and some teams of us that are together, but I want to learn and understand the landscape. I want to be able to understand all of the nuances that are involved in this space before I start isolating and putting myself in a silo. And actually, that's something that I think is a massive problem in this NFT space, is that it's very easy for us to become siloed in our information, siloed in our research, siloed in what matters to us. And one of the things that scares me when it comes to finding these groups of people, and most of them, I believe, are coming together for good reason, right? It's very hard to figure out what NFTs are coming out, what are the things that are happening in other projects. It's very hard to kind of stay in the know. I mean, it's why we launched a couple months ago Alpha Mondays, right? So every Monday night on Twitter Spaces, myself, Shira Lazar, as well as Manushka, the three of us host a 2-hour Twitter space every Monday night where it's Alpha Mondays. We let people come in and share some alpha and let us know some things that are going on. But I will tell you, one of the things that like scares me is that if I was looking at people's bags, right? If I looked at their NFT collection, and let's say you gave me 10 people's collection, it's oftentimes very easy for me to figure out who certain people listen to in this space based simply on what they're holding. And that to me can be a problem because I question if everyone that you're listening to, everyone that's a part of this group, shares your values, shares the things that you're about. Now, that's not saying that you can't join a group and then do your own damn research on top of it. But one of the things that I believe often happens is that you are committed to doing your own damn research, but then you join a group of people that are all talking about a project they're going to jump into or something that they're excited about, or their decision to go from, hey, we all own like 1 or 2 of these. What if we all bought 10 of these? Like, how would that impact the floor? How could we protect the floor? How could we sweep the project and really make the floor price jump up? And the thing that happens in those situations is oftentimes you either feel part of the team or you kind of feel like you're sitting on the sidelines. And that's a weird feeling when you're part of a closed off, closed knit group. And for me, this can be, I would probably argue that some of my decisions within alpha groups have probably cost me money in the long run, right? Has actually prevented me from, being in on a couple projects early. But the reason was simply, I didn't trust or know the person well enough that was making that recommendation. I didn't have a track record with them. So even though the collective group decided that this was a project they all wanted to jump into, as I did my research, there was a couple red flags for me and I ended up not being a part of it. And, that project happened to be one that really exploded and has a massive floor price right now. And for me, that can be a little bit frustrating. But at the same time, I'm also in this to educate, to bring people along on the journey. And I'm very committed to understanding the fact that if we really want to move things forward, if we believe in what we're doing, if we understand where this is all going, we also have to recognize that if we only sit in siloed groups, then how do we even know what else is going on or what others are doing, right? We really end up, in my opinion, pigeonholing ourselves in an area, in a space that honestly is always growing and always changing. And there's a couple like alpha groups. You can call them whatever you want. You can call them alpha groups. You can call them inner circles. You can call them, the good old boys clubs. There's a couple of them that if you're, these are very influential people in the space. But if you look at their overall choices and decisions, they will make 30 decisions and 2 of them will pay off. And those are the 2 they talk about, they brag about, but they don't explain that they had 28 fails, 28 projects that they jumped in as a group. The floor price went up. Then people realized there's really nothing behind this other than a couple influencers or a couple big names putting their name on it. And then the floor price comes down because there was really nothing behind it other than some hype. And so I say all of that because here's actually where I think we have to go with this, is we need to start looking at it and saying, who are the people that we can build a trusted circle with, but not a complete circle? we need a circle that is open-ended, that we can invite more people into, but it also allows us as a group to not feel like it's an all or nothing scenario. So what does that really mean, right? So if you go into our Discord here with the podcast, I take, great pride in this community. And I just have to give a shout out, Killin' Time, who is in our Discord. Whenever I had my wallets hacked, he jumped in and said, hey, I will create a wallet. Let's bring together some donations for people to buy back a couple of the NFTs that we had stolen. And the community, every one of you raised over an ETH. And I was able to buy back the Crypto Chick NFT that I had stolen. I was able to buy back it from someone that innocently, bought it on the secondary market. And shout out to Tofi King was the name of the person that actually bought it. I appreciate great people, right? I reached out and said, hey, the NFT that you just bought for really cheap was actually mine that got stolen. And he said, hey, I'll hold on to it for a couple of days. If you can just pay me back what I paid for it, then I will gladly give it back to you. And so I appreciate him for being honest. I love, everyone here in the community that did what they did. And I will also say a shout out to one of our listeners. He doesn't want to be called out, doesn't want to be, me to use his name. But I also had a listener that said that, that they were a fan of the podcast and they were thankful for all the things that I was doing. And I had saved them time or money based on the podcast. And they went out and bought me a psychedelic anonymous NFT that was very similar to the one that I had stolen that we will not get back. And that was, almost 4 ETH that a stranger, that someone that's just listening to this podcast purchased for me. And I will say it hits me in the feels. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you to the community and Killing Time and the group that kind of rallied together. I also want to thank, there was over 15 projects, probably closer to 20 projects, that when they heard my wallet was hacked, they reached out and said, I know my NFT is in there. Let me replace it with another NFT from my personal bag. Like, the founders of these projects were willing to give me one of their NFTs so that I could replace it in the bag that we had kind of violated. And I'm going to do a whole blog post, and I'm really going to give a shout out to a lot of these amazing projects and people. But this is actually the reason I kind of bring this full circle in this episode, is that there's a difference between creating a group of people that are going to strategically move together versus bringing a community of people together that share the same values and understand that we have the same goals and beliefs, but also recognize that there is no pressure or no, there's nothing being forced to be done in this space, right? And like, I love that there are people in our Discord every day suggesting new projects, talking about, asking questions about, hardware wallets and, hey, what do you guys think about this project? I bought one of them. I'm thinking about buying 3 of them. And the beauty that I feel of that we've kind of created is that it is a safe space to make recommendations, but it's also a space that does not come with any pressure, with any, let's just say, unspoken rules that if you are here, you must also make these actions. The other part of this that I think is important is that, the power of whales, power of those that have really, really big, that's kind of funny, really, really big wallets, they can really, kind of shift the way certain projects, certain things happen in this space. And I believe they're a massive part of what this entire arena looks like. But I also understand that there is something beautiful about the fact that the more individual holders a project has, the less individual influence 1 or 2 people can have on a project. And so I have a rule that when I'm researching new projects, I want those projects to have well over 50% individual ownership, right? My goal, I like that 50 to 70% individual ownership range, right? Because for me, I want people to be able to have, I want transaction volume. I want, I want people to have more than one because maybe that's, they're betting all in. So they believe in the community so much, they hold 3 of them. But I also it scares me when there's certain projects that there's just a few people that have thousands or over hundreds and hundreds of NFTs. And part of that is because it's no longer about kind of the greater good. It's about Like that project is everything to them, right? And with that really comes, without them meaning to, their sphere of influence, the way that they look at things, the words that they use, the advice they give is actually now very skewed. It's actually one of the reasons, and I actually haven't shared this on the podcast before, but there's a couple projects that I believed in hardcore, and I jumped in and bought 10 of, 12 of, 14 of. And I recognized that if I'm only buying 3 on average of most projects, if I have 10 or 12 of one project or just a couple projects, even if I don't want it to happen, I'm going to have a little bit of like a bias and a little bit of like leaning towards these projects that I have more of, right? And one of them happens to be the Wild Goat Gang, right? I'm a big fan of that project, big believer in what they're doing. Another one happens to be the Giraffe Tower with Gary Henderson. Gary's been on the podcast, big fan of what he's doing. But one of the things that I had to own, because for me, it's about, looking in the mirror and being proud of the person I am. It's about grabbing this microphone and knowing that the advice and the things that I'm giving are coming from a place that is as trustworthy as I possibly can, and being authentic and true to the things I believe. I started selling some of those projects down to where I didn't have so much more of them, that it was actually kind of making me jaded or making me biased in the things that I was looking at. And because I'm doing so, it actually doesn't mean that I believe less in the project. Actually, I reached out to one of the founders and I was like, no, actually, I'm completely bullish on the project still. But what I would prefer to have is less of the project and more of the ones that I just really love of that project. Now, that's my own strategy. Others have other strategies, right? Like where they say, hey, if I'm in a project, I'm not going into a project unless I have 20 of them, because they want that 20x return, right? Because maybe it only goes up 1 ETH as a floor price, right, for them to sell it. But if they have 20 of them, that's a 20 ETH gain across the 20 projects they have. And I'm not throwing shade on that strategy or philosophy. But what I am saying is that you are surrounding yourself with people that have those type of strategies. Be very careful with the advice that they're giving, because they're not doing it in many cases from an intentional place. But I find this as a massive issue where when you have a bunch of people bringing in a bunch of ideas and you don't know what research they've done, you don't know if they've been paid to promote that, you don't know if they've been given 50 whitelist spots and they're just telling you to jump in there because they know they're going to buy so many of them that they want more people involved. So for me, here's where I want to go with this is you might be thinking, well, Brian, are you anti-alpha groups or anti these? No, I'm actually not. I'm actually extremely pro these type of groups. And it could be WhatsApp, it could be Signal, it could be Telegram, it could be a paid Discord community. But here's where I lean on this from, is you have to really not only trust the people that are coming in and sharing information, but there has to be a layer of transparency and understanding. And the thing about that is that transparency and understanding cannot come just from the top. If the person that created the alpha group or created the private Discord or created the secret WhatsApp community, the transparency cannot just be from them. It must be for everyone included. And so when someone's sharing a project, they must share how they found it, what's their involvement, who do they know involved, what are the things that they've gotten or not received on the back end, what are the things that like, what is like their motivation. And guess what? That can be scary. And for a lot of the alpha groups, I believe there are a lot of people that are looking still for a quick win, where they're like, you know what, if I can get this group of whales to jump into the one project that I hold a bunch of, and that project moons, I'm set for life, I'm good. And when you have people that are there for the greater good, but then there's also people that are only caring about themselves, that can really create a toxic culture and community. And what I've been seeing lately is that there are some great groups that I was a part of that really have just fallen apart. And part of it is because there were some great people in there, but there were also some people that were looking at it and said, hey, I won. I hit big. I got into this whitelist. I was able to buy 20 of them, those NFTs. That NFT is now worth a lot of money, and they're no longer sharing, no longer giving information. And for true collaboration and co-creation to thrive, everyone must feel that not only is their voice valued, but what they receive from something is also valued. Because here's the problem, and here's something that you want to be aware of. If people feel like they're getting charity, they're not going to be comfortable in that group. If people feel like they're the only ones giving information and they're not getting value from that group, then they're also not going to be comfortable in that scenario. Real collaboration, especially amongst a group of diverse human beings, is not an easy task. And it's something that requires consistent evolvement, consistent, kind of bringing people back to the table. And I believe with the changing landscape of NFTs, with the changing way that we're getting a layer of transparency now where, I will tell you, I will look at a group of wallets, and when I see that group of wallets all buying into the same project, I run the other way. When I see a bunch of people talking about that, hey, we're all jumping into this new collection, or hey, look at this, we're going to do a giveaway for this project, it scares me. Now, that's funny because I'm a person that believes we are greater than me, and that collaboration is the fuel for innovation. Let me say that again. Collaboration is the fuel for innovation. So the key for us as we look at this moving forward is we can't isolate ourselves so much so that we lose touch with reality and we become so siloed that we aren't making decisions for ourselves. We're making them for everyone else that we are part of this group on. And that's where things can really go awry. And one big group decision can make everyone bankrupt. While at the same time, we also have to evolve and find ways to scale, right? I can't be in every Discord group. I can't be active everywhere. And I love, all of the listeners that are part of this, NFT 365. I love when you tag me or you send me a project and say, Brian, I found this project. I think you might be interested in it, right? And I'll usually reply and say, hey, thanks so much. I'm going to add it to our list of projects that we're going to do research on. And the reason I say that versus like, oh my goodness, this is amazing, I'm going to jump in, is because I still believe in having to do my own due diligence. And I also believe because of one person's, recommendation, that's hard for me to make, my own actions or even the actions of this entire project or community. But here's the thing I don't want to happen. We need to continue to share. We need to continue to help each other out. If we get, for those that are listening, when we get a project that comes to us and say, Brian, I want to share whitelists with your community. And I'll let them know, I'm like, we have 365 holders of the Superfans NFTs. I would love for you to give a whitelist access to them and you can share what it's all about. But I will put into the Discord, hey, I found this group, or this group reached out, and I'll explain how they reached out, what research I've done or haven't done. And I let people make that decision. But not every group that comes to us are we opening the doors for. And I know a lot of projects, they're like, hey, I'm going to give everyone the chance, and then everyone can do their own research along the way. Well, what about the people that don't have the time to do the research, and they're like, you know what? I love this community. This community posted this project in their Discord. I'm just going to go for it, right? Like, what about those people, right? And for me, I sometimes get into trouble, right? Because I am a massive empath, and I really deeply care about other people. And sometimes I take on other people's struggles and pain without them even asking me to do so. And so I recognize that, and I'm working on that, right? And when it comes to mental health, and it comes to emotional connections, and it comes to things like loyalty and trust, I understand that we can all be different and approach these things differently. But I also understand that I want to be able to seize opportunities and make money like everyone else. And I want to be able to lift people up. And so part of it is being very aware of myself. And so the way that I'll kind of wrap this up together for all those that are listening is the place that we can invest the most amount of our time, so that if we are a part of these groups or we are joining these communities, is our own self-awareness. I preach it on stage. It's one of the keynotes I give. That if we want to be part of a great team, if you believe we are greater than me, the thing about that is you cannot be part of a greater we until you are first the best me that you can be. What I mean by that is you need to understand what success for you looks like in the NFT space. You need to understand what are your individual goals. You need to understand what are the things that matter most to you. You need to have those things locked down. You need to have those things dialed in. You need to make sure that you go back to them over and over and over again and review them and tweak them and test them. But here's the magic. If you do that, when you join these groups, these communities, these private discords, you're not going to have any of the concerns that I just talked about, because no matter whatever the collective group is doing, or the sphere of influence, or what people are putting in front of you, you are so committed to understanding what matters most to you, the self-awareness that you have for yourself, that you won't kind of fall victim to some of like the FOMO, or some of the peer pressure, or some of the, well, if I don't do this, are they still going to include me? Because for you, you recognize what's most important for you individually. And so I challenge us all. We all need to write down, what does success mean to us? What are our goals in this space? What are the things that we are, our values that we will not violate? We won't, under no circumstances will we do these things. And if we own them, if we hold on to them, we make them ours, then I'm all for it. I say jump into these groups. I say find as much information as you can. If you want to come back and share it with us on the Discord, we would appreciate that as well. We're always looking for new ways of discovering new projects, new tools, new artists, new discovery. But in the bigger picture, if you aren't investing in yourself first, you're going to get lost on who yourself is. And in many cases, the things that you'll be doing in this space, especially in the short term, you won't even recognize as things that you want to do. And I will say this, there's no one project, there's no one collaboration, no one brand, no one offer that for me is worth jeopardizing the trust and the community that we've been building together. So no one project, no one opportunity will I jeopardize or risk the trust that I have with this community, because I don't care how much money that is involved. What we're building is something that is changing lives, that is moving mountains, that I believe is going to be around for the long term. When I say the ADHD coin superpowers this podcast, I've got plans for the ADHD coin 5 years, 10 years from now. I even told my daughter how cool it would be that when we go to college, we'll have such an ecosystem around ADHD coin that we'll be able to do some fun things for her when she goes to college. She's 12 years old. I'm not thinking short term. I'm not here for the quick wins. I'm all in. I'm ready to deliver. I'm ready to continue to deliver. I'm ready to build people up. I'm ready to be there when people fall. I'm ready to be committed to understanding the greater good. I understand that maybe sometimes my own sacrifice ends up being I have to sacrifice my own success or my own short-term happiness so that we can move this forward together. And that doesn't bother me. I'm all in on that side. So with that being said, my friends, I'm all for finding your people. I'm all for surrounding yourself with people that make you better. But we first have to be committed to knowing ourselves, being self-aware, having mental health checks, making sure that we're not too involved. We're not too addicted to refreshing our OpenSea or going into Coinbase and seeing how much our crypto's gone up and down. We need to have those people that can check on us, that can be around us. And if those that don't have those people, or you're looking for more of those people, definitely jump over into our Discord. I don't promote our Discord for the most part. For me, I want people to come in. I don't want people to feel like I'm bribing them to come in. I don't want people to feel like I'm forcing them. I don't want people to feel like that if they're not a part of our Discord, then you're not getting something. We are delivering as much as we can everywhere. Hopefully you check out the blogs. Hopefully you check out the email newsletter. Hopefully check out, if you're on Facebook, check out our Facebook group. Just search NFT 365. The group will pop up. But more so than anything else, just remember, you only live once. And the person that's most important to take care of, the person that's most important to stay true to, is the person that stares back at you every single morning in the mirror. As long as you're okay with that person that's staring back at you, then I support you, I celebrate you, and I hope you'll have a great day. Cheers.